we've just seen one of the best World Series in many years. Many people have been saying, the joy is back in baseball. Do you attribute that to the rules changes, differences in the kinds of players that are being scouted and trained? What's been the biggest innovation on the field that you've noticed?
Well, the joy never left baseball. Well, obviously, I mean, we're talking about all the tailwinds and all the growing popularity of baseball. I think that the rule changes were very important. I think the league did a really nice job of isolating a few things we could do just to get the same amount of action fit into 25 minutes less of game time, and I think people have responded very positively.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of SBJ's On Stage. I'm your host, Taylor Bloom. Today's conversation brings us inside one of the most storied franchises in sports. This episode features Tom Ricketts, chairman of the Chicago Cubs, in conversation with Joe Leccese, chairman Emeritus of Proskauer. Recorded on November 19th, 2025 at SBJ's Dealmakers Conference in New York City, the discussion explores how Ricketts approaches ownership of a legacy team that balances tradition with transformation. From long-term strategy and leadership philosophy to the evolving business dynamics of the sport, this is a candid look at what it takes to steward a historic franchise in a modern era. Let's go on stage.
Please welcome Tom Ricketts. And to Jim's point, if you want to start your Monday morning off well, have Abe and Jim write an article that you want the job of two of your most important clients. It really kind of gets you off to a wonderful start in your work week. But Tom, even the sizzle video was talking about Wrigleyville and some of the ancillary development. Given what you did, what Atlanta did in the Battery, this is now all the rage. But not everybody's executed it well. So maybe you could talk to us about the things that you did that you think were most economically beneficial and most beneficial for the fan experience.
Yeah, so our story, obviously, and you mentioned it, we go back 16 years ago last month, and when we became involved with the Cubs, we knew there were a lot of things we had to do to try to get better on the field. We knew that the ballpark itself was going to need an incredible amount of work. But one of the things I really didn't understand as well back in those early days was just how much better we could make the area around Wrigley Field. For one thing, it wasn't very attractive. It looked like an old parking garage, when people weren't there. But then it really wasn't serving our fans on game day very well, and it certainly wasn't serving the neighbors on game day, on non-game days. So we have a little bit of property around the field, and I give Crane Kenny, our team president, credit for going out and purchasing a lot right across the street from there, and we didn't really know what we were going to do. And so, we just knew that we had to do something that was going to really make our game day better and really make life better for our neighbors, and then hopefully, ultimately, be economically valuable to us. And so, with that kind of like team first kind of thinking, we started down the path, and we talked to potential advisors or people to help us with it, but ultimately decided just to go our own way. And I think that was, maybe the best decision that one of the best decisions we ever made, because it allowed us to really dig in on what was happening around our ballpark, to really understand what we could do that would be better for the neighborhood, understand what we could do to be, better for game day, to make it more family friendly, to give people more options when they come to Wrigley Field. And over the years of getting not only getting the physical look right and the programming right, we built this expertise. And so one of the things that we've done since then, because we've had such great success there, is stand up marquee development or set up marquee development, which basically allows us, with our kind of team DNA and all the experiences we have around Wrigley, to go out and help other teams try to do the same thing and be as successful in serving their fan base and their neighbors as we have been. So,
no, and I think what I wasn't as cognizant of is you're working with an NFL team, you're working with a soccer team, you're working with other baseball teams. Yep. What are the differences in the sort of profiles of the ancillary real estate for each of those different sports? Because obviously their game day experiences and their cultures are different than baseball.
Yeah, I think that's really critical. Like every team, and every sport is different, of course, but every team is different. I mean, the location you're in, How close are you to transportation? Are you in an urban environment? Are you kind of in the suburbs? Everybody has their own set of unique circumstances. And so I think one of the things that's happening as people get closer to the sports adjacent real estate market is we have to be very careful not to come up with cookie cutter answers, because I think that if you have kind of a one size fits all kind of strategy, I think you're going to fail. And I think a lot of developments are looking at, hey, here's our stadium, here's our arena, whatever. I think if I just put some sports bars around here, this will all work out. And I think a lot of people will be very disappointed. What you really have to do is to really think through how you're going to use the game, how you're going to use it on game day, but also how people can use the area around the ballpark on non-game day. But ultimately, and this is something we're all seeing in all of our teams, the way consumers are consuming game day is changing. People don't want to just park, go in the stadium, come back out, get in their car, and go home. They want to get there early. They want to maybe go get a burger beforehand or see some music after. And then they also want variety. Like, you got 81 home games as a baseball team, and so you want to have the ability for your season ticket holders and your frequent fans to curate a different experience every time they come. Sometimes they're coming with their buddies, sometimes they're coming with maybe their spouse, sometimes they're coming with their kids. You have to build all that variety in. So I think the key is there's no one size fits all. Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody has different circumstances. And the magic is really understanding what you're trying to accomplish.
So many of our non-sports real estate clients bemoan to us how tough the business is these days, and I think the business is very tough. Construction costs are very high. Tariffs, which don't generally affect our industry, affect construction. Labor costs are high. Operating expenses are high. And many of those things that, as you say, people put in there, whether it's restaurants or office space or hotels, are relatively low margin businesses. Mm-hmm. So how do you choose which of those lower margin businesses to risk that kind of capital on?
Well, once again, it's always going to be subject to the space itself. Right. Whatever sport it is, whatever location it is, whatever city it is, you have to spend a lot of time thinking through what you're trying to accomplish. Do formal surveys, do focus groups, understand what you're trying to accomplish before you go ahead and start deciding what to build. But I would say that people who have that opportunity should look at it closely. Maybe it's not for everybody, but like I said, fans are consuming their game day differently. I think people are expecting more when they come to a sporting event. I mean, there's an element of being defensive about this too. Like, you want to keep fans coming back. There's an element of, I want to bring more people to the games and have a great game day experience for them. I also think it's something that for us it's been very good for honestly our image, our brand, our family. Number one thing, of course, is winning, and winning the World Series is the greatest thing you can do. The greatest thing you give your fans is a championship. But almost as often, people come up to me and say, thank you for what we did in the neighborhood. They live a few blocks away. They bring their kids over to watch movies on the big screen, and they do things that are really highly valuable to them. So in a sense, I think that not only you're creating value for your neighbors, but you're also that's reflecting well on your team as well as a club.
And did you use any partners, people who are experienced real estate developers or hotel developers or otherwise, or did you do this all through Marquee, 100% by the Ricketts family?
Well, there's a lot of partners that come in and out throughout different parts of the project, but we were our own master developer.
Well, switching gears to another industry that's been a little tough, let's talk about RSNs. Over the last few years, obviously, Diamond entered into a prolonged bankruptcy proceeding. They ended their relationship with a number of baseball, basketball, and hockey teams. Other people who are very active in that industry exited the market, so there are teams that have no RSN deal and are trying to exercise a certain amount of self-help. But the heavily branded teams, the Cubs, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, continue to do pretty well, although even there the operating margins are down. Tell us how you see the Marquee journey, sports journey, going now as an RSN that is owned and operated by you and your club.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, obviously we all watch the same movie. The fact is that over time, the number of cable subscribers and satellite subscribers has been declining. And that model, the RSN model, worked extremely well for basketball as well, and for hockey and somewhat. But it was a really nice thing to have as a baseball team for a long time. I mean, that model worked well for us. As the number of subscribers for those media outlets, those channels fell, like ultimately we had to just adjust. And so the fact is, the way people are consuming their sports media is changing, and we have to change with them. I think one of the better decisions we made was to start our own network. And I think it's given us the flexibility to try to meet the needs of our fans and our viewers in a way that it would be difficult to do if we had a lot of partners or other teams that we had to service. And I think that's been a big plus for us, and I think that's helped keep Marquee Network very strong. It also allows us to bring a lot of players back, engage a lot of former Cubs to come on TV and be part of the organization, and fans always like that. It's also allowed us to try to adapt to the changing market environment. We have been able to go out and set up Stream Marquee, where we have over 100,000 streamers now that are direct to consumer for us. So we know that's where the ball is going. So we have to be able to get to them as well. So we've had a successful run with it. We've been able to in spite of a really tough headwinds for the market, I think we've done really well with it, and we like Marquee Network, and it's been a great asset for us.
Yeah. I mean, 100,000 streaming customers in a single local market is very impressive, but for many clubs, it doesn't necessarily make up for the loss of revenue that comes from diminished subscribers, diminished carriage fees, and the like. So with more of an industry perspective than anything with the Cubs, how long do you think it will take for streaming to begin to replace the revenues lost from the conventional distribution model, or do you think it can happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know when it happens, but I think it will happen. I think the value of live sports is still very strong. It's just the ways in which people are consuming it is changing, and we have to adapt to the way people want to watch the games. And I think that's going to be our driving force.
One of the commissioners, not Rob, was quoted as saying that he thinks the word local will basically become an antiquated term, and that the games that we are all used to saying are local broadcast games, in baseball, let's say that 140 or so games that are not on a national network are going to be aggregated in some way. You'll find them on Amazon or Apple or some other sort of streaming service. Do you see aggregation coming in terms of multiple teams offering their quote-unquote local rights together through some platform?
Yeah, not quite yet. I think in baseball's case, and I only know baseball really, like the fact is that baseball's, people want to watch their home team. Like, we're focused on our home market, and we just really want to drive viewers to our channel and just get them our content as much as we can.
And a little while ago, that industry-leading publication Jim referred to earlier also broke the story that later today Major League Baseball will announce some new media deals for the next several years with ESPN and others. Any insight as to what may be different about those deals than the deals we've all come to know and love for carriage of baseball games?
I'm not going to get ahead of the league and their announcements. I'll let them speak for themselves. But I think that what is good about what's going on there is the national viewership of Major League Baseball games was up pretty dramatically last year. So there's a lot of, baseball has some really solid tailwinds right now. The national broadcasts were up like 16% on average viewership. Local broadcasts were up as well. We increasing attendance for a number of consecutive years. There's a lot of things happening in baseball that are really positive, and hopefully these new national TV deals will reflect that.
So we're obviously going through a time of unprecedented pricing in professional sports. The steepness of the curve by which franchises have appreciated has really been remarkable across all of the sports. You shared with me when we were talking before the conference how, because you come from a very rigorous financial background, the methodology used to value the Cubs 16 years ago, maybe you could share with the group kind of the analysis you went through to say this is a good deal for me at what was then seemed like a very high price.
Yeah, I think our evaluation 16 years ago was just throw a number and hope it worked. But as people know, people that follow the industry know that historically sports teams trade as on a multiple of revenue. That's just become the way that the mechanism that most people look at it. Over time, not only have revenues gone up, but that multiples gone up. So there's been a lot of increasing, the sports teams' values have gone up dramatically in the last 10 years. I think that a lot of that is, people realizing the value of sport in the ever-changing media market and all the different ways that people can consume different types of entertainment. Sport is still pure, it's still genuine, it's still compelling, and it'll be compelling hopefully forever. I think that's one thing that people have realized. I think the second thing, and something that we did look at when we were buying the Cubs a long time ago, was it's a very solid, stable, long-term investment that historically has grown faster than most of the indexes and highly uncorrelated to them as well, if that's a concern. So I think it's been a good asset. And the third thing I think is just like the increasing awareness of the scarcity value of having a team. Like it's just a really unique asset. They're not making more of them, at least not in the major sports. And so when you have those factors, that it's a great investment, and it's going to stand the test of time. And these organizations have been around, in our case, 150 years. It just adds up to get more value in the door.
And when you think back to the analysis you went through in 2009 versus, let's say, if you were doing it today, were there things that you overweighted then and maybe underweighted then, where if you were buying a team today, how you factored that into your thinking would just have a different balance 16 years later?
Well, I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier. One thing that we didn't put any value on, I just didn't really have a concept for, was the opportunity to develop the real estate around Wrigley. And that's something like, when we talk about you do this, you do a development outside your stadium, you can bring we do 850,000 people that come on non-game days to the area around Wrigley Field. And that's, one thing that, maybe 16 years ago I didn't really have a full appreciation for. So I think that was a, just a great opportunity that we fleshed out over time. I think in looking back, I think we had a lot of it kind of okay. Like, I think the media rights, we probably underestimated the value of the media rights early on. But as you were talking about, as the market has changed, we're kind of, media rights are kind of declining a little bit because of the RSN situation. So, I think away from that, we had a pretty good feel for, what it could be with attendance. One of the things that, we didn't have a firm grasp on was what it would really take to preserve and improve Wrigley Field in the way that we wanted it to. And so we probably had less in our model about like premium spaces, because they didn't exist yet. We didn't know how we were going to pay for them, or didn't know how we were going to present them to our best fans. So there's a few things that have changed, I think, over time.
Well, one of the things that has been factored into these franchise appreciations is the value of the international market. And the NBA and the NFL tend to get a lot of the attention, but obviously baseball has had some success in that regard, and you're now the chairman of the International Committee. Where are you seeing the greatest opportunities for Major League Baseball outside of the four corners of North America?
Yeah, well, I think one place where baseball historically has underperformed is just in investing in international markets. Obviously, parts of Latin America, Japan, Korea, Taiwan. I mean, those are places where where baseball is a big sport, and I think that we're making a lot of progress in those markets for sure. I mean, obviously, we have not only Ohtani, but a lot of great Japanese players that are playing in the U.S. now. That drives a lot of viewers. I think we saw that over 51 million people watched Game 7 around the world at some point. So, but over half of those were in the U.S., but the rest were outside the country. So I think we have a great opportunity in the nations that were already established to become their number one baseball option and watch as many MLB games as they can. And I think that's growing, and the value of our games in those markets has grown a lot. I think we also have a great opportunity to expand baseball to markets where it's not as popular. I'm a big advocate for investing in games overseas. We obviously have played in Mexico, but also like in London, and I think we just need to keep doing those kind of things to build the global fan base. We've got investments in India and a few other places where we're just getting started. So I think I think it's a real upside for us. And if I was looking at a baseball team today, I would see that as maybe like a free out of the money option that if we do it right, should add a lot of value to the organization and to the league.
So when you look at a map, obviously Japan, Korea, Philippines, always popular destinations. Is there one country where you say that could be the next Japan or Korea in terms of our popularity as a sport, where people might?
Well, things are growing in Mexico. And Mexico is like the 9th largest TV market in the world. That's one place where we're getting a lot of growth. In terms of Europe, I think it's really tough. It's very saturated. Like we'd like to nurture a core baseball kind of fan base over there, but obviously they have a lot of other sports, and it's tough to crack into that. But I think ultimately India is probably our best, largest untapped market. So.
We can't have a sports conference these days with someone of your financial acumen without talking a little bit about private equity. And obviously in the panel right before lunch, we had some of the best known investors in the world represented up on the stage. But I think it's interesting for people to hear from ownership. My guess is that when you offered an interest in the Cubs, there were no shortage of human investors interested in that. But one of your investors were our friends at Arctos. Mm-hmm. What drove you to take a PE investment as opposed to, a wealthy Midwesterner, and how has the journey worked out for you and for them?
Yeah, I mean, Arctos is one of our limited partners. They've been a great partner. I think the benefits are, first of all, you get scale because they'll come in with a little bit larger check. But secondly, they see the market, they understand the market, they know what other people are doing in the market. They've been value add for us on that standpoint of what's going on in baseball. They're also value add for us on talking about what's happening in other sports, right, and really understanding what's happening outside the world of baseball, things we typically wouldn't see, but they're much closer to. So they've been great partners. I don't think that I would discourage anyone from taking private equity. I think the only thing that you worry about in the back of your head a little bit is if there's ever a time where there's distress in the industry, how many people are going to be looking for liquidity at the same time? I mean, that might be one risk when you have a bigger piece. But frankly, for regular limited partners, having private equity involved increases liquidity overall, and it should increase the value of the teams over time.
And as you look out over the next 5 years, are there any rules changes you think you could see baseball or the other leagues making to further accommodate institutional capital, or is everybody going to sort of see how this first wave of investments goes?
Well, I think everybody's kind of seeing how it goes. I don't think there's anything on the table at baseball at the moment to change the way that private equity is getting engaged. But what you will see, and I'm sure, Joe, you've already seen some of this, is like as private equity is getting involved, a lot more structure going into the types of investments. Maybe 15 years ago it was you're just a standard limited partner, but now you're seeing a lot more private equity both coming in as equity partners or as debt or some kind of hybrid component, creating more, just more tailored solutions for different types of investment. Right. So I think balance sheets and capital structures will be a little more complicated going forward.
Switching gears a bit, there have been several unfortunate stories across sports, college basketball, baseball, about betting implications with respect to players. Entirely appears on prop bets, and the commissioner hopped right on that and seemed to have made a deal with some of the leading intermediaries to limit prop bets, but it wasn't clear from the media reports exactly what the parameters of that were. There were some stories that prop bets are now limited, at least the major platforms, to $200 on a prop bet. But do you have any sort of point of view on that, and do you see further restrictiveness by the leagues with legislative support on prop bets?
Well, we'll have to see how this plays out with the baseball players that are involved. I don't know all the facts, and I don't know that. I mean, I know that one of them has already said he's not guilty, so I don't want to get too far ahead of it. But I think there's always going to be a challenge with every sport to make sure that you monitor your gaming markets in a way that you look for that kind of like aberrant behavior that might indicate that somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing. And so, vigilance and diligence. I know that there are mechanisms and algorithms they run to look for those kind of bets that don't seem to fit. Hopefully, if they have caught, whether it's someone in our sport or someone else, if we do catch someone and they do get sanctioned, that's enough of a deterrent that players with so much to play for and so much money ahead of them just don't make bad short-term decisions.
More positive things about the game. We've just seen one of the best World Series in many years. Many people have been saying, the joy is back in baseball. Do you attribute that to the rules changes, differences in the kinds of players that are being scouted and trained? What's been the biggest innovation on the field that you've noticed?
Well, the joy never left baseball. Well, obviously, I mean, we're talking about all the tailwinds and all the growing popularity of baseball. I think that the rule changes were very important. I think the league did a really nice job of isolating a few things we could do just to get the same amount of action fit into 25 minutes less of game time. And I think people have responded very positively. I mean, as you know, I walk around every home game talking to people, talk to dozens of people some days. And so over the course of a season, I'll talk to thousands of people at Wrigley, and nobody has said, gosh, I missed the old game.
Right.
So I think that's been very successful. I think away from that, just like a lot of compelling young players in baseball too. Obviously we have a center fielder that's just so exciting. Obviously Fernando Tatis, players like that are just exciting super athletes that are also getting a lot of attention in baseball. And the World Series was great. It wasn't as good as ours, but it was pretty solid. And for us, when we look at those matchups in the World Series, you really are hoping most of all. You want to go as many games as possible because it's just the tension and the excitement and the storylines build over time. And anytime you get to a Game 7, that's a great World Series.
Given the rule changes, given the influx of analytics to baseball, how differently does your scouting department select players today as opposed to 16 years ago when you first came into the organization?
Yeah, I don't know where to start on that one. It's so different. My first year, I asked our head of baseball, we were going to sign a player. And I said, hey, well, what do we got on him? Well, let me get you all of our stuff. And they brought me a stack of papers, which were printouts of websites that had information about baseball players. And so it was just like, here's Yahoo.com's version of him. Here's, and that was kind of how we did our research back then. Since then, everything has changed. And we've built our own platform called Ivy. It takes in data from over 90 different third-party sources, and some of that data is flat data, like just straight stats. Some of that data is video. It's amazing how much information we have. And in fact, there's so much going on, and then I'm sure there's so much growing, particularly with AI coming in, to be able to, to search that data and pull more out of that data more quickly. It's changed everything, and I don't think there's any comparison to the way someone looked 16 years ago to the way we analyze players now.
And do you think that today's young athlete who's only grown up in an internet-enabled age and now an AI-enabled age, are they more flexible with coaching that comes from analytics than perhaps the first generation of players had been?
Yeah, I would assume so. What baseball players typically have is they have their own coaches that are related to the team. They have the coaches from the team, but they also have their own hitting coaches or kind of like mentors away from the team. And so you can get all the data from the team, but it's still a very mental game. It's still something you really have to program and process to apply. So I'm sure it's very different. Each player is a little bit different. I'm sure they listen to the teams and all the data that they get to try to improve. But I still think it's really important that the old school way of just understanding who you are and what you're trying to accomplish when you come to the plate, I think is still very big.
What do you think we as fans can expect the biggest change on the field to be in the next 5 years in terms of how the players play the game?
Well, first of all, you can expect us to win the World Series each of those years.
My note says Cubs in 5. Is that correct?
I think what you've seen the last couple of years, a lot more speed, a lot more defenses. I think teams are looking much more strong and much more carefully at how they put their defense together. I think it's going to become more of a game of error prevention than just hitting home runs. And I think that's great. It's great for fans.
And obviously, all sports team owners are sports fans, right? You probably watch the other sports games. Is there anything you see the other sports doing that you say, I'd love to see baseball try a little bit of that?
Well, I've been a little bit, I've been a little bit jealous of some of the international efforts. I think the NBA has done a lot overseas. NFL's played a little more, played a few more games. And I think that's something we can learn from other leagues that, those investments will pay off over time.
Super. Well, Tom, thank you for this journey, and we really appreciate your time, your insight, and we look forward to more developments and several more world championships from the Cubs. Great. Thanks. Thank you again. Okay.
Thanks for listening to this episode of On Stage. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with colleagues or anyone interested in leadership, ownership, and the business of sports. Here's a closing thought starter to take with you. How do you honor legacy while still creating space for innovation and change in your organization? I'd love to hear how you're thinking about it. Send me your thoughts at tbloom@sportsbusinessjournal.com. We'll be back next week with another exclusive conversation from a leader shaping the future of sports business. Until next time, stay tuned and stay ahead. This is On Stage.